Oshi is a 2023 anime series that is based on a manga by Akasaka and Mengo Yokiyari that is basically part of a poll that MatthewThePrep started in my server, alongside Anne Shirley, Rent-A-Girlfriend, and I Got a Cheat Skill in Another World, which, getting started, is one of the most surprising shows that I'd come across so far, given that, admittedly, the show started off on an extremely rough note before gradually picking itself up from there, though this review in particular is using the Sean's Thoughts branding because it's going to be going into its third season, which is going to be licensed by Crunchyroll as opposed to Sentai Filmworks, who handled the first two seasons that will be covered in this review, at least by the time that I'm scripting this one, given that this review is labeled SNR 143 and started production on November 8th, 2025. So, what is the premise of this show? Well, did you ever want Hatsune Miku to have her own anime entirely? Well, that's the closest that we get in regards to this show. This show revolves around the children of the legendary idol named Ai Hashino, named Aqua and Ruby. They retain memories of their past lives, with Aqua having previously lived as gynecologist Goru Amaniya, and Ruby having lived previously as a terminally ill cancer patient named Serena Tendoji. One day, a stalker of Ai killed her when she answered the door in her home, leading Aqua and Ruby to having to take on different paths in life, with Aqua searching for the guy responsible for his mom's death, and Ruby wanting to follow in her mom's footsteps of being an idol singer. Now, the first thing that I should bring up about this show is that it honestly starts off on an incredibly rough note. Now, unlike with Wolf Children, where that movie started off beautifully before taking a nosedive around the end, Oshinoko's first episode started off pretty badly, but picked up around the end, as the first portion of the 90-minute first episode gets pretty uncomfortable and cringe-inducing, with Goru being downright obsessed with Ai, despite her being 16 years old by the time of when he was still in his previous life, and the nurse even calls him out on this behavior, as well as Serena saying that she wants Goru to marry her, despite the fact that she literally says that she was 12 years old, which was in a flashback no less. And there's also the factor of Goru and Serena retaining their memories of their previous lives when they get reincarnated as Ai's children. They're both still obsessed with her, despite the fact that she's their mom now. Now, it would have been understandable if, in the context of this 90-minute pilot, Goru was around the same age as Serena, and Goru was 16 when he began obsessing over Ai, but having a grown adult gush about her is just discomforting to watch. Or better yet, why didn't they just have the show start with Ai giving birth to two kids, the kids grew up loving her group songs, and then Aqua would then plot to get revenge on the one who killed Ai to begin with? It would basically serve the same purpose, and the unfortunate implications would have been solved, instead of having it loom over the series. Like, even Code Lyoko and Eek the Cat's first episodes, while they were worse because they either didn't properly introduce its characters to the audience, or made the show look bad, you could generally skip the pilot episode of both of those shows and you wouldn't miss anything. Meanwhile, the beginning portions of the 90-minute first episode of this show are important to watch, unfortunately, because the show basically mentions that Aqua and Ruby had previous lives, and those moments in the episode just completely misrepresent what the series does. Because in regards to the rest of the series, this is definitely one of the biggest surprises that I've come across so far for Sean's Network reviews, though I do have to emphasize the word "so far," because the show as of November 2025 only has 24 episodes and has a chance of either getting better or worse. Where the show really starts transitioning into the show that is representative of how it is now is near the end of the 90-minute pilot, where Ai's stalker kills her because she got pregnant, because something that Oshinoko has a surprising amount of is episodes that tackle very serious subject matter while also having characters that are very complex. In one of the earlier episodes of this show, which actually had a disclaimer regarding self-deletion, one of this show's more interesting characters, Akane Kiryokawa, becomes the subject of a harassment campaign lobbied against her to the point of nearly unaliving herself before Aqua saves her. And everyone knew that the mistake that she made on set was just an accident, as earlier in the episode, Akane had major self-doubts about herself after she overhears an argument that her agent had with the higher executives. And speaking of Aqua himself, he shows at points in the series that he has trauma regarding what happened to Ai, to the point where he ends up having a stroke before having to be taken to the director's place and getting some rest. And apparently, even Ruby is going to be going through a similar arc as Aqua pretty soon, because in the season 2 finale, she and Akane discovered the skeleton of Goru. And yeah, about the characters in this show, they have a lot more to them than meets the eye. Kana, on the surface, is basically the stuck-up child actress that you'd basically see in any other series of its kind, where the rich and snobby character basically targets the main character because they're not as popular as them. But in actuality, Kana is basically a has-been, and she's basically trying to hold on to whatever she has left, due to the fact that she's looked down upon because she's not as naive or innocent anymore, which is what leads her to joining the new Bikamachi with Ruby and Memcho. That one flashback, where it's revealed that the actress that Akane has looked up to is not actually what she appeared to be, really does hit hard emotionally. Not just in regards to Kana, but also with Akane. Because imagine if at a young age, you looked up to this person that you perceived as being kind to her fans, only for her to reveal that she's actually cold-hearted and nasty. And speaking of Akane, while she's not as interesting as Kana, because we get less screen time dedicated to her than Kana, I can see many people resonating with her on a personal level, because as stated before, a lot of people in real life do make impulsive decisions when they're under a lot of physical and emotional stress, which is what ended up happening in episode 6. And season 2 is where she ends up shining the most, though this season is not nearly as good as season 1 for a reason they'll get to shortly. But I do like what they did with Akane in this season, as they basically had her help Aqua when he ended up getting a panic attack, and they also established a rivalry between herself and Kana, though I am a bit worried that this will result in the show going into the direction of having a love triangle between Aqua, Kana, and Akane, and there have already been hints that this is where the show is gonna go, with Aqua frequently going out with both of them. Though, given that the show only has 24 episodes at the moment, these problems have yet to show up, but what I will say is that one of the issues that this show does have so far is with season 2. It's definitely the weakest season of the series so far. I know that anime does have a tendency to have filler episodes, specifically so that they don't have any issues with getting to the end of the manga that quickly, but a majority of season 2 of this show revolves around the characters putting a stage play together called Tokyo Blade. But like, was having this be prevalent throughout multiple episodes really necessary? Like, all of these moments could have been put into a montage and nothing would change. I mean, the only things that would change is the depth that they give to characters like Aqua, Kana, and Akane. The latter two literally had flashbacks in 2 episodes that were happening in the middle of the play. But other than that, this aspect of there being a play just came out of nowhere and just distracts us from what the show is supposed to be about. Aqua being on a dating show in season 1 was understandable because his goal was to try and get as close as he can to someone in the entertainment industry to find out who killed Ai. But what does Tokyo Blade have anything to do in relation to what Aqua is trying to accomplish in this show? Yeah, I get that one of the characters that were previously on this dating show was the author of the original manga that this Tokyo Blade play was trying to adapt, but again, all this was pointless filler that could have been cut down. And season 2 was so hyper-focused on the Tokyo Blade play that there are like 3 or 4 episodes in a row that are revolved around them still performing in this play, but in all honesty, the play was nothing special. It just came across as, in the words of AVGN, a cliche samurai story. Like, if you watched all these episodes in a row like me and MatthewThePrep did, you wouldn't really catch on to this issue. But bear in mind, the gap between seasons 1 and 2 was an entire year. But yet, a good chunk of season 2 decides to shift its focus onto a play. And as soon as this arc gets done, there's not that many episodes left. And the season puts its focus back on what the show is trying to accomplish, where Aqua is trying to look for Ai's murderer, but not for long, because Aqua finds out that he's dead, or at least that's what we think, before we then transition to Ruby wanting to get revenge now instead of Aqua. Though, regardless of that, I was pleasantly surprised with this show. I wouldn't say that Oshi no Ko is the best show that I reviewed so far. The series does only have 2 seasons so far, but the series is definitely enjoyable, especially when compared to the previous 2 shows that I and Matthew the Prep, regarding runes, marathon in preparations for reviews. And while season 2 is definitely the weakest season of the series so far, unlike what I did with Eek the Cat or Kolyoko, I can't exactly point to it as a jumping the shark point, or if the show went off the rails just yet, because of the fact that it's still ongoing and has plenty of time before it either gets better or jumps the shark. The Amazing Digital Circus, by the time that I'm scripting this, has released 2 amazing episodes in a row, and I presume that this series is only gonna get better from episodes 7 to 9, and considering the fact that season 2 of this show ends on a cliffhanger, where we find out that Ai's stalker might not be dead after all, can only mean that things are only gonna escalate in season 3, but the show is on hiatus at the moment, but season 3 will premiere at the beginning of 2026. I look forward to what they will offer, but due to writer's block that I've been having while scripting this video, this review will now have to come to a close.
Everything